Hi, and welcome back to the Lancer Lounge. I'm your host, Mr. Sherman. I'm joined today by our newest assistant principal at Lincoln High School, Mr. Sage. Mr. Sage, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on in. I appreciate you giving some time today. I know it's a very holy day for you and your family, so thank you for coming in and spending some time on Good Friday with us. So, Mr. Sage, before we get into our, back and forth interview, I want to congratulate you and your family on the birth of your newest son. That's some good news during this distance learning that we're going through and this quarantine. So how has that been, bringing in a newborn?
Thank you. It's been different for my culture and many cultures. You have a lot of people visiting, hospital visits, congratulating you, things of that nature. In the hospital, it was just me. Nobody was allowed. It was very, very, very closed down. At home, we're just, in the house. The newborn, I have a 2-year-old son as well, and my wife who just gave birth. And we're working hard. So it's just a balancing act. As you could tell with some of our meetings, I have one of my sons in one of my hands, and then we're working with the other hand. So you just try to make it work. I'm happy to be home to help and, kind of to be of assistance to my wife, because it's not easy with a newborn and a 2-year-old. So in that way, this kind of worked out for me. But still, it's out of the norm of our routine, but we're getting there.
Right, and you kind of just said it. It's kind of a blessing for you, because normally you would have to be at school all day and then come home to your wife and your 2-year-old and your newborn and be exhausted from working. But it's somewhat of a blessing to be able to actually be home during this early age.
Yeah, if you ask my wife, I'm not that much of a help, but I try my best. But yeah, it is a blessing because I'm here. As the man of the house, you try to protect the family and everything, especially during this time. You just try to do what's right. So I'm glad to be home to help.
So as I said, Mr. Sage is our newest assistant principal at Lincoln High School. He joined us back in January. So why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself? We know obviously now you have 2 sons and you're married. But why don't you tell us a little about your professional career and how you ended up with us at Lincoln?
Yeah, so I started my professional career in 2012 in the Bronx, PS 33. Right on Jerome and Fordham Avenue. So, one thing I remember from that school is I had a smartboard, and every time the Ford train passed by, I would have to recalibrate the smartboard because it would shake the building. So that's one thing I took from that school. But to start in the Bronx, it teaches you a lot because it's really like a boot camp. My first few months there, I was like, how am I going to survive this? No way I can do this for 30 years. But as you grow into it, you start loving it. The following year, I went to Yonkers. I started at Martin Luther King Academy. I taught special ed there, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. I did that for 3 years. And then I transitioned to a resource position that was split between MLK and School 13. In the meantime, doing this, I got my master's in school building leadership from Mercy College. I also was the CSC liaison. I, did professional development for teacher and staff. So I had my hands in a lot of things. I did the Leadership Academy. So one day, Principal Davey from MLK calls me and say, hey, you have an interview tomorrow with Dr. Casada and Ms. Judan. And I said, for what? She goes, to be the assistant principal at King. I said, can I have a second to think about this? She says, I'll see you at 9 at the board, and shuts the phone in my face. So needless to say, I went in very nervous, went in for the interview. I guess I did well. I got the job. I did 2 years at King where I learned a lot. King was a very tight-knit community because we all started there as the receivership. So it was a lot of young teachers, non-tenured teachers kind of growing together and learning together, which made it very good. Then last year, I received an email saying I'm going to Cross Hill, starting this year with Miss Joyner. And so we started there, but then in November, I injured my ankle. So I was out for a little bit because I couldn't kind of navigate the building. And then I got a call that I'm going to Lincoln, which I'm very thankful for. And I've been at Lincoln for about 2 months. But I feel like I've been there longer. Everybody's been welcoming and helpful. And it's just learning the high school, which is a little different. But we're getting there. And with this distance learning, I feel like it makes it a little more difficult. But you guys are the admin team and teachers are always available for any questions that I have.
Wonderful. So how have you been dealing with the quarantine?
It's different. I'm decently versed in the technology part, professional technology, just from professional developments, things of that nature. And I used it as a teacher and administrator in the elementary a lot. But it's a complete different ball game in the high school. You know, you have 300 kids you're responsible for, and you need to maintain that line of communication with them, your teachers, and the admin staff to make sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. The biggest thing is the regents, and in elementary it's 3 to 8. So you're getting graded as a building, but in the high school you're getting graded. Each student has requirements that they need to get to. So it's just balancing home life. Again, I have a newborn, a 2-year-old that always wants to play and always is, God bless him, he's a ball of energy. So I try to get out in between calls and things of that nature, just so he has a little time, because he's used to going to a daycare where he's got classmates, he plays, he learns. So you just try to balance everything, and it's tough.
So that kind of brings us and bridges me to my follow-up question about the biggest adjustment. So learning how to work at home is not something that we ever thought we would have to do in the education field. So how has that adjustment been?
Yeah, it's difficult, but thanks to my wife, she holds it down, especially during the conference calls and things of that nature. But just balancing home, when you're working in the building, you're in the building. That's your time to work, and then you drive home. That's my peace, my transition period, closing one door for the day and then opening the next door. Both doors are open throughout the day now. There's no clock out. And there's no, coming home. It's I'm home and I'm working all at the same time. So you just try to juggle it as you go throughout the day.
That professional life and that personal life mixing together that, as you said, we all try to keep separate sometimes, but right now it blends right together. We are, we're on 24/7, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've had calls where, your family has peeked in and my family has. It's nice that, we all get to see each other. But again, there's no split right now. Our office is our home, and our family is home, obviously. So you just try to do your best.
What's one thing you've learned about yourself professionally during this time of quarantine?
One thing, it's adapting. I feel like, there's guidance every day for this protocol or that protocol. You just try to read up on it. You try to be your best because, as the principal and as the assistant principal, you're the face of it to your teachers and your students. You are the voice of reason. You're the one to give them assurance. You're the one to guide them. So one thing is adapting. Everybody's distant learning. Some teachers are having difficulty. Some teachers are adapting well. Students, they might not have the technology. They might not know, they know TikTok and Snapchat, but they don't know Microsoft Teams as well as we might have thought they do. So it's just adapting and teaching. So that's one thing that I've learned. I can adapt better than I thought I could.
Which is a great skill to have as we move forward, because we don't know where this is all going to go. So adapting is definitely big. What's something that, before quarantine you might have taken for granted, but moving forward, you're really going to appreciate more of?
It's the interaction. We stand in front of the building every morning and we say good morning to everybody. That's no longer there. You go to your office, you sit down, you open your computer. It's just a routine of things. I enjoy routine. And then that transition between closing school and taking that 20-30 minute drive home. That's my time. And, right now it's everybody's time, which is okay. But that used to be very helpful because, whether it's sports radio or just listen to a podcast, it was my downtime before we rev it up again for my 2-year-old.
Right. And then, in your opinion, how do you think history is going to look back on this time? And, how do you think they're going to write it?
In terms of education, I think for the most part, everybody's been caught with, lack of a better word, with their pants down. In terms of preparation, we don't have a sole thing we're doing. Everybody's trying to adapt to the best of their ability. So some people are comfortable with different things. But that's the biggest thing. I feel like this whole distance learning and just the parents, the students, the teachers, just the entire educational field, weren't as prepared or well versed as we possibly needed to be for this, because it was so abrupt when it first happened. But in terms of history, it's sad how this all is going about, and everybody's frantic to find a vaccine for this virus. But it teaches us that we have to take care of each other, and protect those that you love and just your community, because right now, if we don't follow these guidelines, it could be much worse than it actually is right now.
Right. And then, in closing, what is one piece of advice you would give to everybody? It could be either school related or just personally, or, whatever you feel like just sharing with our viewers.
Yeah, it's just don't take things for granted. This has taught us a lot, and personally and professionally, for our students, for the adults and just our communities, is don't take things for granted. Appreciate those who do the simple things, the people that work in a grocery store, the firefighters, the cops, the hospital workers. You never think about these things, but, appreciate the things that we have in life, because, all of a sudden it can be taken away from something as simple as a virus, because you just don't know.
Well, I thank you so much for all of your time. Again, taking time out of your day today on, Good Friday. I wish you and your family the best of you can make of this Sunday on Easter. I will tell you, celebrating Passover the last 2 nights virtually, it's very different. But I found it to actually be a little bit more meaningful because it was just my immediate family. So I hope that you appreciate that, as it is your son's first Easter with the family. And thank you again for coming on to the Lancer Lounge.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman, and happy Passover and happy Easter to everybody. Thank you.